Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to an official college football playoff preview where I go over and I react to all of the potential big-time playoff / New Year's Six games. And I'm also going to be looking at the ever-important strength of record metric when it comes to college football. These final 2 weeks, who stands well? We've got the ratings upcoming. Those are coming tonight. And we also do have the Heisman odds, the updated Heisman odds. Looks like a 4-man race right now. But let's begin. And guys, the first thing that I can say in looking at these, preview right here, people are pissed off. They're angry. Looking at some of these matchups, they are not good. But you can see Michigan and Florida State. Michigan sitting -6. That would be the Rose Bowl. And then you do have Georgia versus Oregon. We saw this game a few years ago. Or was it? I think it was last year. Yeah, the Georgia-Oregon game. Dan Lanning reuniting and Oregon getting destroyed. Georgia would be -2. Those would be the 4 teams that make the playoff. You have 1 Pac-12, 1 SEC, 1 Big Ten, and 1 ACC. The Big 12 would get left out in that scenario. That would be Texas getting left out, Ohio State very likely losing to Michigan. You can see the Fiesta Bowl. It would be Washington taking on Alabama, kind of similar to Alabama's New Year's Six bowl game last year. Bama would be sitting -5.5. I think it just depends who plays for Alabama. I'm guessing Jalen Milroe actually would play because he's not going to be going to the draft. You wouldn't think after this year. I mean, if Jalen Milroe returns to Alabama next year, he's going to be a beast. You do have Penn State sitting -14 versus Tulane. Vehemently disagree with Tulane being in a New Year's Six game. If you actually look at the analytics, they are 0-4 against the spread in their last 4 games. They're not very good. They were in it last year. Come on, let's give another team a chance. That's just my opinion. And Penn State, poor Penn State, they keep getting these crappy New Year's Six bowls. Remember when they faced Memphis a few years ago in a New Year's Six bowl? But what do you do with Penn State? They always go 10-2, or at least they have been going 10-2, losing to both Ohio State and Michigan. And then you do have the Orange Bowl, Ohio State taking on Louisville. The Buckeyes sitting -13.5, and this one would be a very disappointing year for Ohio State. This would mean they lose to Michigan again. They don't make the Big Ten championship again, and they're in a crappy New Year's Six bowl again, facing a Louisville team that I'm not even sure Louisville is going to be the other ACC representative to make a New Year's Six bowl in the first place. I think it might be North Carolina. North Carolina probably would put up a better fight than Louisville. Ohio State, I'm guessing McCord would be playing in this game. What else would he be doing? It's not like he's going to the draft. But yes, they would very likely be without Marvin Harrison Jr. This is why we are eliminating these meaningless New Year's Six games and putting these into the 12-team playoffs so we don't get players like Marvin Harrison Jr. sitting out. And then taking a look at the Cotton Bowl, it would be a really bad matchup. Texas versus Missouri. That might get a record low number of ratings. Now, Texas is a big program, but that would be kind of I don't know, man. That's a brutal game right there. Texas sitting -1.5. Quinn Ewers, by the way, possibly returning to school. I don't know if you guys saw that. Let's take a look at the Cheez-It Bowl. Why don't we? Ole Miss taking on Iowa. Ole Miss massive favorites, -13. A lot of that depends on the opt-out situation for Ole Miss. Is Jackson Dart going to the NFL? Would he play in this game? I'm guessing Ole Miss would easily beat Iowa. The Big Ten is just not deep this year, obviously. Iowa, they're a frustrating team to play, but they just have no offensive talent. It is what it is. But maybe Iowa, maybe they've turned a corner with the 400 total yards of offense last week. Notre Dame and LSU. Don't Notre Dame and LSU, it seems like they faced each other like 5 times in the past 10 years. No, I think they were just in another bowl game recently. This is another good bowl game on New Year's Day. You basically have it as a pick-em, depending on if Daniels plays in that game. He's possibly going to be a first or a second-round pick. He'll possibly be a high pick. The Arizona Bowl, I don't know. This is not even a big bowl game. Utah State. Utah State is making a bowl? I didn't even think they were that good this year. Bowling Green's been decent. I don't know what to make of that game. A&M versus Wisconsin. Yeah, the Big Ten this year is just, look at that, -13.5. Even with Jimbo Fisher getting fired, they're -13.5 against. Wisconsin is just given up. Maybe Wisconsin, I don't think Wisconsin would win that game. Moving on to the Liberty Bowl, Iowa State, SMU is a fun matchup. Oh yeah, Both of those teams might actually be in well, I don't know if Iowa State can really be in a better bowl than that. They already have multiple losses, like 3 losses at least at this point. But SMU, I still think they have a good chance to make a New Year's Six Bowl with just 2 losses if they win out. Their analytics are unbelievable. They're a top 22 teams in terms of FPI. They've got great game control. I could see SMU with Preston Stone really having a fun time against a Penn State team in a New Year's Six Bowl. You do have the Sun Bowl, Miami and Utah. Oh, that's a miserable matchup. Oh, God. The Tax Slayer Bowl, Tennessee, UNC. That's a fun game. But Drake May won't play, so who cares, right? Yep, that's the problem with bowls. And then the Alamo Bowl, Oklahoma versus USC. Well, Caleb Williams isn't playing that game, so pretty meaningless. I'm guessing Dylan Gabriel would play. Oklahoma would very likely be... I mean, maybe USC has a true freshman 5-star, Malachi Nelson. Is he with their team yet? Maybe they would start him if Caleb Williams opts out of it. The Pop-Tart Bowl, or the Pop-Tarts Bowl, NC State taking on... Yeah, Kansas State is good. Kansas State's a good football team. They'd be heavy favorites in that game. And then the Pinstripe Bowl, Georgia Tech and Rutgers. One of these years, we got to get a snowstorm for the Pinstripe Bowl at Yankee Stadium. One of these years, we need a snowstorm. Please. And then let's take a look at the all-important strength of record metric. This determines the playoff. Obviously, it's going to change, but right now, you do have Ohio State sitting at number 1 with a remaining strength of schedule number 3 in terms of hardest. That sets up Ohio State very well, possibly to even lose to Michigan, depending, if you're an Ohio State fan, you're rooting for Notre Dame and Penn State. Number 1, if you're an Ohio State fan, Notre Dame and Penn State need to win out. If Notre Dame and Penn State win out, those are 2 potential top 15 wins right there on your resume. And then your only loss would be to Michigan. That's a pretty good resume, although the problem for Ohio State is, like, Wisconsin has completely fallen off. And originally we thought that was going to be a decent win for Ohio State on the road at Wisconsin, but now it's even valued like less than Rutgers. So we'll see what happens. You do have Washington at number 2. Look at Washington's FPI, 13. The analytics hate them, but the strength of record loves Washington, and they have the 5th toughest remaining strength of schedule. It'll be interesting. Let's say Washington loses to Oregon State. They are 2.5-point underdogs. Then they win out. I think they're in. I mean, their strength of record is going to be amazing. We'll see. FSU sitting at number 3. Right now, Florida State, based on how bad the ACC is, they have the clearest, most easiest path. They're number 3 in strength of record, and they have the 39th toughest remaining strength of schedule. Not hard at all. They're going to be facing a team. Who are they going to face in the ACC championship? Maybe North Carolina, Louisville, but they should be big favorites whoever they face. You do have Michigan sitting at number 4. For Michigan, it's very simple. You need to win out. Unless you get crazy chaos, you have to win out to get in. You got to beat Ohio State. You're going to be slight favorites at home, but you need to win out. You just don't have, because that strength of record, if Michigan loses to Ohio State, it's going to drop significantly, and they don't have a non-conference win that can help them recover in terms of that. You do have Texas sitting at number 5, so Texas has the amazing Alabama buffer. There are people saying Texas could win out and still not get in. Yes, it technically is possible. If Michigan or Ohio State win out, they're an auto lock to get one of the spots. If Washington wins out, they're an auto lock. If FSU wins out, they're an auto lock because all those teams are undefeated and they'd be conference champions. And then Georgia possibly winning out would be an auto lock, and that's the way that Texas would not get in. But in my years of watching this, that never happens. Teams will lose. Texas, as long as they win out, they should be fine. Now, Texas has a tough game against Iowa State that I think they might actually lose. I mean, I thought they would lose to TCU last week. It almost happened. But if they win out, I believe they will be in relatively easily. I know you could say, what if everyone wins out, they'd be left out? It's just not going to happen. There's no way we're going to have 4 undefeated teams at the end of the year. I think Washington drops a game for sure. I think, obviously the Big Ten champion is very likely going to be undefeated. Like Ohio State or Michigan are not losing to Iowa or whoever they face in the Big Ten championship. But there are scenarios. And then Florida State, to be honest, will very likely be, Florida State will be undefeated. I know they face Florida at the end of the year. If that game is in the swamp, maybe Florida, yeah, Florida's just kind of fallen off. I don't know. And then you do have Alabama sitting at number 6. I think Alabama's in a fine spot. The only issue for Alabama is the fact that they lost to Texas at home. Now, certainly you can argue that was a different team. Jalen Milroe was not, as good as he is now. That was only like his second career start. I get all of that. But still, Alabama, they've got a great resume. If they end up beating Georgia, you have to think, as long as nothing crazy happens, like as long as Washington loses, they're probably going to get in. But maybe they also need Texas to lose. I don't know. I mean, if you're Alabama, you have to be rooting against Texas, because if it's a one-loss team versus a one-loss team, and you don't have the head-to-head against them, you're not going to be put in over them. There's just no way, especially considering you lost to Texas at home. But I still think Alabama, as long as you win out, your resume is going to be so good, there should be enough chaos to get in as a 3 or a 4 seed. You do have Georgia sitting pretty low in strength of record. That can all change if they beat Alabama. They also face, who do they face? Tennessee coming up. So Georgia's going to continue stacking wins. I do think with Georgia, they probably have to win out just because of how bad their non-conference schedule was. If they lose a game, like if they lose to Alabama, I think they're out, because they would be 12-1, but it's going to get really annoying because very likely that Georgia-Alabama game is going to be really close, and everyone is going to be saying on ESPN, Georgia should also be in. They won the last 2 national titles. They lost a very close game to Alabama. You can't penalize them for playing in the SEC championship. So it becomes that type of charade. I think the hope is that Georgia just straight up beats Alabama. They get in, and then Alabama's done, and you don't have to worry about 2 SEC teams getting in. Ole Miss is done. They're gone. Oregon, obviously, is the other team. So Oregon's an interesting case. A lot of people love Oregon, and you can understand why if you look at their FPI at number 3. The issue is they just do not have a good resume. They really haven't beaten any great teams. I would say for Oregon, if they win out, it's a curious case because they're going to have the analytics. I don't know if they're going to have the strength of record. Their remaining strength of schedule is not good either, 26th. Yeah, I don't know about Oregon. I mean, I don't think they would leave Oregon out, but there are scenarios where if FSU wins out, Ohio State wins out, Washington wins out, you still have Alabama and Tennessee probably in front of them being ranked. That's going to be tough for Oregon, man. It's going to be very hard. They just do not. The problem is Oregon's non-conference game at Texas Tech. I thought that was going to be a good win for them. Texas Tech is kind of, I know they beat Kansas, but they're not what we thought they were. Missouri is still sitting there. They had that loss to Georgia that pretty much eliminated them, but they can still make a New Year's 6 game. James Madison is disqualified. They're done. And then Louisville, Louisville does have a chance to make a New Year's 6 game. I think right now they do only have 1 loss. People are saying maybe they could make the playoff. It's not going to happen, folks. Let's be realistic about it. And then we are taking a quick snapshot look at the Heisman odds. I'll give my analysis. Bo Nix sitting minus money right now in major sports books. You do have Penix Jr. with a huge chance against Oregon State to really jolt up. We'll see if he has a Heisman performance. Marvin Harrison Jr., he's going to need at least, I would say, 150 yards and 2 touchdowns against Minnesota. If he wants to keep pace, his stats are a little low right now for a receiver to win the Heisman, but the path is there. He would have to absolutely take over the Michigan game and have like 220 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then Jaden Daniels, the issue with him, it's the 3 losses. It's a big problem, and it's going to be very hard for him to overcome that. We will see. I mean, Bo Nix right now, I'm just not seeing the big win for Bo Nix, I guess. You can understand his stats are amazing. I totally get it. Only 2 interceptions. But I guess, you look at his remaining schedule, it's very easy. He's going to put up really good numbers against Arizona State, and then he gets the game against Oregon State to really just have his Heisman moment. Penix Jr. sitting there as well. The last game he's going to be playing is against Washington State. Marvin Harrison Jr. It looks like Bo Nix is definitely the favorite, but maybe Marvin Harrison Jr. as a dark horse. Daniels has the great stats, both rushing and throwing, but the issue is the 3 losses, and then you do have Carson Beck and Jordan Travis. Jordan Travis just doesn't have good enough stats at this point, even though his team is undefeated. Same thing with Carson Beck, but either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on X. Link to that's always in the description.